Chilean Carabineros, the riot police, detained several high school students during a rally demanding a new constitute process after the rejection of a constitution draft on September 4th. In Russia, state-owned company Gazprom said restarting the Nord Stream 1 depends on the Germany-based company Siemens Energy. In Indonesia, citizens protested against the increase in fuel prices issued by the government. From the headquarters of TeleSUR English in Havana, Cuba, this is From the South. I'm your anchor, Gladys Quesada, and these are the news. Chilean Carabineros, the riot police forces, detained several high school students during a mobilization that sought to demand a new constitute process after the constitutional draft was rejected on September 4th polls. Spokespersons of the student groups have denounced that there were several arrests, some of them of minors, and that the anti-riot forces used water cannons to disperse the demonstration. The massive march of students stopped in the vicinity of Palacio de la Moneda, the seat of the Chilean executive in Santiago. The mobilization, called Mochilazo, takes place in the framework of a reshuffle of Gabriel Borich's government. In Brazil, former president and presidential candidate Luis Inácio Lula da Silva headed a campaign coordination meeting, together with representatives of the Brazil of Hope coalition. After the meeting in the city of Sao Paulo, in a press conference, da Silva referred to the possibility of winning the second round, since according to the polls, his candidacy has 45% of support in voting intentions. Likewise, the presidential candidate for the Workers' Party presented the figures of family debt in the country and assured that it is not enough to win the elections and improve the income of the Brazilians, but that he will work to create conditions so that families can negotiate their debts. Lula denounced that he is fighting with adversaries who use fake news and other practices that do not correspond to democracy.
Of all the elections in which I have already participated, this is the one that seemed to be the most difficult, because we are running against someone who does not know any democratic ethics, against someone who works on the basis of fake news all day long. And we are running against adversaries who have decided to try to attack us as much as our first and most important opponent.
Also, Lula da Silva said he hopes to win in the second round, since people know what they want.
We will also win in the second round, as we have already won in so many elections. What I wanted to emphasize here is the greatness of the Brazilian people. You can be absolutely sure that people know what they want, that people know the difference of Brazil in the time when we governed compared to the times of today in the government of that citizen. People know they lived better. They know they ate better. They know they studied better. They know they thought better. People know they had much more expectations of a brighter future than today, when life has become a nightmare.
In Ecuador, the government and the indigenous movement remain in dialogue, despite postponing the opening of new tables until the pending issues are solved. The Minister of Energy and Mines, Xavier Vera, after hours of meeting between the parties, committed himself to give answers to the points addressed in the analysis of renewable resources. The requests are based on the specific topics such as mining and oil, as well as reforms to the hydrocarbons law, the Amazon law, among others. Indigenous organizations claim that with more than half of the time elapsed, the dialogue has not progressed beyond meetings and the answers are still up in the air. In Mexico, the families of the miners trapped in a coal mine on August 3rd accepted a compensation and a plan of at least 6 months to recover the remains of their loved ones. The settlement comes after last week President López Obrador guaranteed that the families of the miners will receive compensation from the government, highlighting that many live in poverty. Also, the families of the 10 trapped workers accepted the rescue plan presented by the government and which they had initially rejected for taking several months. Authorities in charge assured that this plan was determined after several geological and geotechnical studies.
We reached a very important moment when the consensus signed by the relatives of our miners turned out to be a very important indicator for us, accepting the compensation from the Mexican government, which will be delivered these days. Mr. President, we are days away from them receiving the compensation directly from the Undersecretary of Human Rights, and they also accepted that an open pit excavation be carried out here at the Pinabet mine.
The Civil Protection Coordinator explains how the rescue maneuvers and the construction of a memorial in honor of the fallen miners will take place.
This is another very important outline where you can see the work to be done by the Federal Collection of Electricity. It is expected to make an excavation of 5 million cubic meters immediately, carry out the search and recovery of miners, and then conclude in the filling again of these 5 million cubic meters and leave the Pinabet mine closed and build the memorial.
We'll take a short break now. Join us again after this. Welcome back to From the South. In Russia, the state-owned company Gazprom said restarting the Nord Stream 1 depends on the Germany-based company Siemens Energy. Gazprom's Deputy Chief Executive Officer Vitaly Markelov said Russia's largest natural gas pipeline to Europe will not resume pumping until Siemens Energy repairs the broken equipment. According to official information, an oil leak from a turbine engine at a compressor station is preventing the operation of Europe's main supply route. As a result, some EU countries are considering the implementation of measures to mitigate the consequences of the shortage. The United States government affirmed that the sanctions imposed by the West against Russia are preventing the operation of the Nord Stream 1 gas pipeline. White House spokesperson Karine Jean-Pierre said that the United States and Europe have been working together to ensure sufficient supplies. These statements come in the midst of what has been described as the worst energy crisis in Europe's history, resulting in an increase of more than 30% in energy prices, a figure that sounds the alarm ahead of winter, as well as contributes to the current high inflation rates.
We stand with Canada, our ally and neighbor.
Portugal unveiled a €2.4 billion package to help households to cope with soaring prices, including an energy tax cut. The government said it will offer a one-off payment worth €125, plus €50 per child to each person earning up to €2,700 per month. Pensioners will receive additional money worth half their monthly pensions as one-time payment. The money is in addition to a €1.6 billion package announced this year. The government, which has an absolute majority in parliament, will ask lawmakers to vote for a reduction in value-added tax on electricity from 13% to 6% and will extend a fuel tax reduction until the end of the year. Prime Minister Costa also announced a cap on rent increases next year to 2% and a freeze on public transport fares. Now we move on to other topics. In Ukraine, the United Nations International Atomic Energy Agency called to put an end to attacks on the Zaporizhia plant to prevent a nuclear incident. After its recent visit to the atomic power plant, the UN Nuclear Agency recommended to establish a security zone around the plant to avoid a possible radioactive disaster. The agency warned that a special storage unit for radioactive waste and fresh nuclear fuel would have been damaged by the attacks. They also warned that if the bombing continued, there will be further damage to equipment and an unlimited release of radioactive materials. Russia's defense ministry spokesperson Igor Konashenkov denounced Ukraine of shelling around the Zaporizhia nuclear power plant in order to create a threat of a man-made disaster.
A total of 20 shells were fired by Ukrainian artillery, including 3 on the territory of the nuclear power plant. One of the shells hit the roof of Special Building Number 1. The second hit the transition area between Special Building Number 1 and the second power unit. The third one exploded near the tanks for the storage of distilled water near power unit number 2.
Russian Ambassador Vasily Nebenzia said during a Security Council session attended virtually by Rafael Grossi, the head of the International Atomic Energy Agency, that the report by the UN nuclear watchdog warning of risk at Ukraine's Zaporizhia plant did not blame Kiev for shelling the site.
We regret that in your report on the safeguards implementation in Ukraine since April to September of this year, which appeared literally a couple of hours ago, the source of the shelling is not directly named. We do understand your position as the head of an international regulator, but in the current situation it's very important to call things by their name.
TeleSUR will dedicate its coverage of the Football World Cup Qatar 2022 to the figure of Diego Armando Maradona, who accompanied our crew in the last 2 World Cups. With the football star, we also toured our continent with the show The Sur de Viajero. We want this tribute to have its own music. With that in mind, we invite you to write or compose a song for TeleSUR's coverage of Qatar 2022 Football World Cup. It must be an original song, never recorded before or published in any media, and free of legal attachments. Record the song in any format, WAV, MP3, even with your cell phone, and send it as an attachment to comunicaciones@telesurtv.net with the following information: author's name, nationality, and the title of the song. The closing date of the call for entries is September 10th, 2022. A jury of prestigious musicians and composers from the region will select the winning piece. The prize will be the recording of the song, a video clip, and the wide diffusion of the work. 1 week after the closing of the call, TeleSUR will announce the results. And we have more news coming up after a final short break, so stay with us. Welcome back. The United Nations Secretary General Antonio Gutierrez announced his upcoming trip to Pakistan after the floods devastated the country and called to the international community to support the Pakistani people.
Flying to Pakistan to express my deep solidarity with the Pakistani people and to appeal for massive support of the international community to the Pakistanis in this hour of need after the devastating floods that we are witnessing. There is a lot of attention on the war of Ukraine, but people tend to forget there is another war, the war we are waging on nature, and nature is striking back, and climate change is supercharging the destruction of our planet. Pakistan, Chad, the Horn of Africa, where the drought is causing famine, all these things represent an enormous threat to all of us. Today it is Pakistan, tomorrow it can be anywhere else. To deal with climate change, that is the defining issue of our time, with a business as usual approach is pure suicide.
On Tuesday, UNICEF Somalia representative Wafa Said warned that Somalia was on the brink of famine for the second time in just over a decade.
It's reached unprecedented level. We have 1.5 million children. This is nearly half of the children under 5 are likely to have acute malnutrition, and of them, 385,000 will need treatment for severe acute malnutrition. Around 730 children are reported to have died in nutrition sites across the country. And to put it into perspective, this is less than 1% of the children who were admitted and cured and discharged.
In Indonesia, citizens protested against the 30% increase in fuel prices decreed by the government. The demonstrations started as peaceful but turned violent after the repressive actions of the security forces. The street actions started in Jakarta. However, as several sectors are affected, several cities report alterations of public order as an expression of rejection to the governmental measure. It is important to mention that Indonesia is expected to host the next G20 summit, where the creators of the sanctions crisis will attend. The Western economic blockade affects all sectors of the Syrian people, particularly women, a harsh reality in the face of which a large number of women and families affected by the war, with the support of the government, dedicate themselves to the sale of handmade products made by their own homes. Our correspondent in Damascus, Hisham Wanus, with the story.
The European and U.S. economic blockade has not succeeded in breaking the Syrian people's will to resist. This is particularly demonstrated by the Syrian women who at this bazaar, on the sidelines of the first conference of the Arab Union of Producer Families and Traditional and Handicraft Industries, hosted by Damascus, display their handmade products to earn income to help them cope with and overcome the consequences of Western coercive measures.
The economic situation we live in is very difficult, which is why it is essential to join the efforts of all members of the family to overcome this harsh reality. And that's why I start my mini Kraken project, and I hope that, in addition to these spaces that the government offers us free of charge to market our products, it will grant us loan with favorable conditions to expand our work. In this place, we offer free spaces for working women from all the provinces of the country to exhibit their products and sell them, and we also support with a broad advertising campaign to attract consumers' interest in this type of merchandise.
At the bazaar, 125 enterprising women exhibit a wide range of handicraft goods, including clothing, carpets, traditional sweets, typical foods made from natural ingredients, women's accessories, copper utensils, blown glass, and carved wood, among others. A social, economic, and cultural demonstration which, besides helping to improve the family economic sector, contributes to preserve the ancient professions that mark the ancient culture of this country.
It is true that we work to overcome the difficult situation that we are living in, but we also work to consolidate our social position and to develop our creativity, artistic talents, as well as to preserve the traditional crafts of our country. People have the opportunity to get to know our products as this bazaar, and I believe that these events are very important for all working women and all producing families to develop their mini projects and market their products.
Women, one of the pillars of the producing families, constitute the half most active sector of Syrian society. They have proved it during the long years of war as mothers, sisters, daughters, wives, deputies, ministers, doctors, actresses, workers and laborers, and they are proving it now in the current circumstances in which the country is the victim of an unprecedented Western economic terrorism.
Hisham Wanus, TeleSUR, Damascus, Syria.
Thank you, Hisham, for this story. And TeleSUR English continues to grow. Its signal now reaches Europe. You can order it from your cable dealer or tune it yourself. These parameters that you see on the screen are in place since July 1st. Quite soon, further changes will be implemented for the signals in the Middle East and Africa. Now, more than ever, the world connects to us and our stories are heard in other farther away nations. This news multi-platform will continue providing truthful content to oppose the hegemonic media's narrative and our faithfulness to our audience. And we have come to the end of this news brief. But remember, you can find these and many other stories on our website at telesurenglish.net. And also, if you feel so inclined, please join us on social media for all the latest news. We are on Facebook, Twitter, Instagram, and Telegram. And now you can also follow us on our TikTok account at TeleSUR English, in which you will be able to see news in different formats, news updates, and more. For TeleSUR English, I'm Gladys Quesada. Thank you for watching.